You go.
All right, all right. It's 11 o'clock p.m. in Montgomerysville, Pennsylvania. And Ben and I are summoning the strength tonight after uh, two debriefs, uh, a team lead meeting on your side, one on
Mm-hmm.
my side too, staff meetings, each of us
Mm-hmm.
on both sides, meeting with
Yeah.
staff. 103, 102 training
Well,
today,
to training today.
and
Yeah.
North Carolina orientation, getting ready to travel this
Orientation.
weekend.
On
All
top
right.
of regular door knocking.
Yeah. Oh
But
yeah, we're
yeah.
doing like today.
Yeah. And wait, let me also be clear. It's 8 p.m. over here. I'm in Arizona, Scottsdale near Phoenix. But in my soul, it feels like midnight. So like we're on the same wavelength, you know. Woke up
Hmm.
really early to fly here from Missoula, Montana. So I think we should just begin with why do we feel so tired? The
Yeah.
season
We
just
feel
started.
that's right. So this is this is the very first weekend of fall travel, and we are wiped. This is day 3.
Day three.
We're at the end of day 3, and our staff and our team leads and our volunteers are pretty pretty lagging. And it's some of it is because of the large sizes of these teams. Some of it's because of some of the weight of the fate of the election. But the biggest part is because of who we are canvassing. And that's what this is about. We wanted to do this call tonight and not have it wait another day because we have discovered after landing in the field that all of our partner orgs are having us go and talk to these people right here. These people. This is one apartment complex in Pennsylvania. And that's an independent, that's an independent, that's an independent, that's an independent. Oh, there's a Democrat right there.
Hmm.
Independent, 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 independent. Another Democrat down there. So this is who we're talking to. This is who we're talking to. That is different than what we expected. And it's also a little draining for us and our volunteers. So we wanted to get this ready. We're going to send this out to people to watch because we're going to go into why we think this is now and talk about how we've been dealing with it on the field because we don't have
Hmm.
any new policies and any practices that we're putting in place are not yet best practices because they're not really tested yet. Well, I mean, they're
Right.
being tested live. So we're going to go into all that.
Yeah. And also to be clear too, you were showing an apartment full of independents, right? That's like the little I. Some of the volunteers in the other states might see AND, which is undecided, right? So different from a registered independent,
Oh,
they're
you've got
simply
those.
undecided. Oh yeah.
Okay.
And while I was in Montana, we even got a LR, which is lean Republican,
Okay.
or straight up R, which is Republican.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we're
Yeah,
gonna get
we
into. Oh, go ahead, go
yeah,
ahead.
we're getting a lot of straight up R's. Let me to be
Mm-hmm.
clear.
Yep.
We're getting a lot of straight up R's also. That was one example there. But the point is that they're independent minded people. These are people who are swayable. And what we're doing is persuasion door knocking. That's what we're doing. We're not doing
Yeah.
GOTV. We're not doing there's an election, here's your information, here's how you vote. We're doing can we convince you?
Yeah.
And that's pretty new for us at the volume that we're in right now.
Yeah. So let's actually start there. What is usually a common power trip, right? Like what kind of doors do we usually hit that this has become like, caught us left like off guard, come out of left side here. So usually on a common power trip, we are told to go to likely Dems or straight up
Mhm.
Dems, right? And our
Yep.
job is to remind them about an election, give them information to vote, and like maybe do a little bit of like, hey, as a reminder, like the Dems are doing really well for us, that kind of thing. If they're kind of leaning towards the other side or undecided.
Yep.
Very rarely, though, are we like straight up told to go, hey, these are people going to be on the fence, and your job is to get them over on one side of the fence, right? Um, and so
Yeah.
a part of that, one of the reasons that we think this is, and we're going to start to go into the reasons here. And maybe the most obvious one is the season, the phase of the season that we're in, right? So most volunteers don't know that organizers or campaigns divide up the weeks of a campaign into literal seasons. They have different scripts for volunteers depending on where you are,
Mhm.
and how close you are to the election day. And usually, the tail end of September, beginning of October for a week or two, is what they literally call persuasion, right? Like persuasion scripts, where you are told to go out and ask what issues people care about the most, connect those issues back to elected officials that we are persuading them to vote for. And then what we're more used to, though, right, is a GOTV script, which is like very much straight up, hey, can we count on your support for X candidate? Do you have a plan to vote? Right?
Mhm.
Very straightforward. So it could just be, the season that we're in. But there's a couple of observations that point to that might not be the case, right, Charles?
Yeah. Yeah. So, as we're talking right now, we haven't talked about this part yet when it comes to the
Okay.
season. I'm reminded that well, of course, we traveled earlier this year, but we did travel after the primaries. So we traveled earlier this year for primaries almost entirely, but we did make a couple trips to key states after primaries, which would
which
have been,
which
well,
one?
Pennsylvania.
No, that was for the primary in April.
That was for the primary. But
Yeah.
the um the talk track was not about the primary really. It was to get ready for the
Yeah.
general.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
So it was a little bit of that like early universe. A universe is like all the people who the campaign has on all the voters that have on this. It was early universe stuff. It was like this is for Joe Biden. We were having conversations about the presidency. It wasn't about the primary. It was really about Joe Biden. And that's when they sent us to Chester, Pennsylvania. And there
Yeah.
were voters who hadn't been touched. Um, maybe were undecided, but they're black voters. And black voters vote, 80, 90% Democrat. So
Mm-hmm.
um these may have been in the persuadable universe, but they're black persuadables, and so they're very those are different. White
Right.
persuadables are more likely to be Republican, especially the men,
Yeah.
especially the men.
And now that like we're bringing this up too, I would not be surprised if persuasion extended out a little bit further than we are used to, because the Kamala Harris campaign is running on a very short campaign. They essentially had to start over with a completely like
Right.
new voting block, right? Like new voters came out to support her. They had to have new data, new IDs on who these voters are. So we might be doing persuasion now because they're simply in that phase of the campaign
Yeah.
because they didn't have a head start.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the reason number one is like general seasonality for door knocking. This is the
Yep.
earliest we've ever door knocked, actually. So
Mm,
Puig and I look back to 2022. Um, I mean, the
yeah.
earliest we've knocked on doors in the fall season, in the post primary season. Maybe
It
we did it in
it
2018,
no, it
but in
was
2020.
September 30th, 2022 was the first trip out for the midterms.
Right. So we're out
Yeah.
we're out like a week before that, which is could be the difference. That could be the difference. So reason number one is the seasonality. Reason number two is the Kamala Harris campaign. So this is both the fact that they're starting, it's only, a couple months old,
Mm-hmm.
and the age of their campaign is different, and so how many people they've gone through on their list is a different time frame. The other one is that she appeals to different voters than
Mm-hmm.
Joe Biden did, and so they're testing that out, and they're spending more time testing that out than they otherwise would, even if she had started earlier or had more time than this, maybe they would have still, because it's a different candidate, they're trying out different kinds of voters to find out where those edges are, where they have
Right.
to push
Right.
in different ways, push with television ads, push with phone
Yeah.
calls, that kind of thing.
And the Republicans for Harris Zoom call, right? Like was a signal that like, hey, people are breaking away from the GOP and what it has
Right,
become, and they may be more willing to vote Harris. But on the data side, right? Like you can't be like that person donated $5 and we're gonna hit that house. They have to be like, these are the characteristics that would make up a Republican neighborhood. There
right,
are some Republicans in this neighborhood that would be willing to vote for Kamala Harris. Who are
right.
they? And our job is to be a sifter of that,
Yeah.
of like, here's a Republican neighborhood and these are the Republicans that will support Kamala.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said our job. So that goes to reason number three,
Mm-hmm.
which is us, which is common power. So we are not your average volunteers. We are trained, led by leader, logistics fully
Organized.
configured, organized before we
Yeah.
travel, and and we're good. We're good. We're good, and we have a reputation for being good. We've proven with these primary trips this year and years before that that we're good at what we do. The word has traveled beyond just within states. Like people, organizers move from state to state, and they take with them the legend of common power and these people that arrive out of nowhere, and there are dozens of them, and they're all ready to knock on doors, and you don't have to house them, you don't have to train them, you don't have to worry about them. Somebody else is doing all of that. And all you have to do is give them literature and turf, and they just knock doors like crazy.
Yeah. And guess what? We got cars. We have cars and
Yeah.
we can go anywhere, right? Um, Charles and I were
That's a
throwing around a
huge
theory.
deal.
It
That's a
is.
that's a huge, huge deal
Yeah.
because a lot of people come in from they take trains in and buses or whatever, and they're like, "We're here, and we can only knock on doors right here."
Yeah, yeah. And so here's the theory that Charles and I've been like throwing around too about this is that like with the influx of volunteers, right? Like we all saw how volunteering spiked after Kamala Harris announced her nomination. And I think when we were a scrappy organization 2, 3 years ago, we were those volunteers that like got motivated and showed up to an office and tried to do something, right? We're no longer those volunteers. Like
Right.
there's a new wave of inexperienced volunteers just showing up, that volunteer bump, that I actually think that we're being sent out further out so that they can accommodate these newer volunteers with turfs closer to the office or more
Yeah.
easy, right? Things that they don't have to worry about if someone has an accident or an incident or something, right? And whereas we have a track record of doing good work and we can talk to voters. So it's not surprising to me that our credibility sends us to farther neighborhoods, harder to reach
Hmm.
voters because they're dealing with a bunch of volunteers that are taking care of what's close to home.
Yeah, this is like a 2.5, right? So
Yeah.
if number two is the Kamala Harris campaign and where she's at in the voter lists and the age of her campaign, 2.5, leading to three, which is us, is that her attraction of new volunteers means that we get displaced out of the easy doors because they need the new volunteers in the easy doors. Um, and they're less mobile. They also volunteers get deployed where they are. So you think of where Kamala's biggest fans are who would knock on doors, and they're all going to go into big cities. They're going to go like we are, whatever, 45 minutes, an hour or something away from Philly. There's a bunch of liberals in Pennsylvania, and they're going to go to the offices in Philly, and they're going to knock on doors in Philly or around Philly, maybe the suburbs. No one is going to Philly and getting sent out to Montgomeryville, Pennsylvania,
Mm-hmm.
or the Poconos to knock on doors for Matt Cartwright.
Right.
Okay, no one's going out.
Yeah.
So they this like massive amount of new volunteers is coming out of the woodwork. They're getting deployed exactly where they show up.
Yeah. And that's a really good segue to point number four. I'm losing track of the
Yeah,
numbers,
that's
but I think
good.
it's point
Good
number four,
job.
right? um, which is that like every time we start a conversation with a partner organization, the Dems, state party, community organization, whoever, we say, hey, you have all of this capacity for boots on the ground. Send us where you need us most. right?
Yeah.
And we've had to earn the ability to be where people need us most, actually, because over time, when we first start out, people are like, you're on easy doors. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you can do. You're on easy
Hmm.
doors. But over time, to Charles's point, like we've proven ourselves. And so when we say, send us to where you need us most, they take that seriously.
Yeah.
So when you're saying that like volunteers are deployed where they are, the volunteers up in the Pocono Mountains are maybe like 5, 10 people, right? Like on a
Hmm.
Saturday. When I was in Montana a couple of days ago, one of the biggest need was in Ravalli County, just like 45 minutes south of Missoula, not in Missoula proper, which is like a college town, blue bubble, right? But in
Hmm.
Ravalli County, directly south of that, where they were on seeing average like 4 Democrats volunteers, like a day, a week, right? So to have an injection of 20, 30, 40 people into a place like that and really amped up capacity for that time being is one, super useful,
Hmm.
super helpful, and also like incredibly valuable on a morale sense. Um, but because people are overloading a specific place, there's less supply, right? If we think about volunteers, that's like supply. There's less supply, but more demand in these
Yeah.
swingier counties and districts where there are not volunteers. So that's the reason why we get sent there as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So number one is the campaign calendar and
Mm-hmm.
the kind of natural ebb and flow.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is the Kamala Harris campaign and where she's at on the timeline for her campaign. 2.5 is like her volunteers that are coming in and what that does to us. Three is us and our how good we are, our reputation, the relationships we have with organizations. And then number four is I forget.
It's just like supply and demand of volunteers,
Yeah.
where the
Okay.
most need is, right?
Yeah.
And then so that has to do with, I think that's actually pretty logistical and operational, right? Like if you were in charge of resources, right, you would say, all right, this is huge, I'm gonna move it over here. These people are
Mhm.
trained, I don't need to train them, I'm gonna just drop them in here. So that's all very logistical and operational. I think the next point number 5, actually has to do with the candidates. So we talked about our
Mm,
partners, the campaign, and us, but the candidates themselves here, right? We're not just door knocking for any Democrats down ballot across the country. Like we are intentionally in battleground states and battleground races. And eyes on the prize here, people, right? Like our main goal is to secure majorities in the Senate and the House, as well as like top of the ticket, right? But to secure majorities in the Senate and the House, some of these candidates are not going to align with us values wise, right? Like
yeah.
a very clear example of that comes from Tester in Montana. And I'm drawing a lot from Montana. It taught me a lot in 2 days. But
Mm,
like the Tester campaign does not bill itself as like a Democrat campaign, right?
mhm.
When you say I'm a volunteer with the Tester campaign, you're not saying I'm a volunteer with the Democrats. They tell you not to, because Tester represents more than just Democrats. His constituency, like if he's to be truthful to his community, right, is the whole political spectrum of
Mm,
like independents, Republicans, Democrats, whoever, right? Because something that we got really like common at doors is that avid Trump supporter will vote for Tester. So our universe, back to that term, our targeted voters were not Dems or likely Dems down ballot, down ticket like we're used to. It was these are the people who have a chance of voting for Tester and a chance to persuade them to vote for Tester again. And they can vote anywhere else they like on the ballot. And a lot of it's going to be Republican.
yeah, you talked about
Yeah.
talking to people at doors and acknowledging that they want to vote for Trump and then trying to get them to see Tester
Right.
as an independent voice and is
Right.
not
And
connected to Democrats.
right. And you and I faced this problem in the beginning when we were door knocking for Cartwright in Pennsylvania
Yeah.
in 2022.
Hmm.
So I truly do think that like when we're in battleground states and battleground districts, the script is different
Yeah.
because like we have to sway a handful of voters and they're not easy Dems, like we're not having easy Dem conversations because the margin is not easy Dems.
Yeah. And these are the people that if we can get them to vote for a Democratic senator or a Democratic House member, they're more likely to consider voting for Kamala Harris. And so that's why the Dems writ large, nationally, statewide, are like, yes, you get these voters out for Matt Cartwright in Pennsylvania, and then we'll work on them to vote for Kamala. You get that foot in the door basically and remind them that they like voting for Democrats or persuade them to vote for a Democrat for the first time. And now they're thinking Democrats are not the enemy. Maybe I can consider what Kamala has to say next.
Right.
So that's the logic. If anyone's watching this and they're like, why are we not working for Kamala? Well, Kamala's a
Mm-hmm.
tough sell in these places where she needs swing voters. She's going to win or lose with Pennsylvania.
Right.
And if she doesn't convince people um, east of Philadelphia to vote for her, then we're in trouble. So,
Yeah.
okay, so those are the
Okay.
reasons why we
Wait.
think this is happening. You got another one?
No, I just had a thought, and it's that time at night where I'm like, I need to say this or I'll forget it. Like, but it's like to bring it all back to the uncertainty of our work, right? There, like, and the way that that principle comes out in field work, be 100% comfortable with 70% certainty, right? The definition of an election is uncertain if it's a battleground state. Like the
Hmm.
swing voters are undecided, which
Yeah.
means we're uncertain which way they're gonna go. And so I feel like for us to carry that principle on to also like the doors in the neighborhoods is something that we haven't really done before explicitly, right? But it's something that we I think might have to start embodying after this weekend because I think one of the realities is that it's not going to change that we're going to be in the swingiest districts in the swingiest states in the country and
Right.
having the swingiest conversations we can have, which means we're having very a high level of uncertainty at these doors.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's going to be a part of what we continue to do,
Right.
especially as more people understand the value and the unique attributes of the common power output.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So how are you handling this? Because it's day three. How are we handling this?
How are we handling this? So this is going to be an evolving thing. So this video hopefully a good tool for anybody in the field. If you're leading a team, if you're volunteering, if you're thinking about coming out, this is worth considering. The how we handle it is good food for thought. So I'd say that the immediate thing, the immediate way that we're handling this, first of all, without like additional instruction, is so let's talk about the things that are already in place that we haven't had to adjust, that
Mm,
just exist within CP. Community is the first one. This community has really made it so that we could weather the initial impact of this. When we went to the doors in Pennsylvania and discovered that way the kind of turf we were getting, it was the cars that people come back to. It was the lunch that multiple cars have together in certain neighborhoods. It was the debrief where we all talk about our experiences together and process it together. That's what got us through initially. It was the community piece. It was the support. It was oh my gosh, I just had this experience at this door. Was it just me? Did you have it too? Okay, you did too. What did you do? What did you say? Um, that's the first thing. That's the very first thing that got us through, and that's what's keeping us. That's the like foundation throughout this entire experience right now is the community that we invest in prior to, you know, the fieldwork assembly that you help put together, that you make everybody have to go through, the stuff that some people are like, I'm not down for that kumbaya BS. I'm not doing that. Um, the breakout session, the thing that Jeffrey led here, Ahmed did something else in the morning. There's been dialogue for democracy in Arizona. There's been,
mm-hmm.
there's Matthew led something in Michigan, and you've had something in Montana. It's that investment and the training beforehand. That is what has led us to be able to survive a bunch of this.
Yeah. And it can also get very tactical too. Community is not just like the programming that we do or like the people that we come back to after a hard day, right? It can get super tactical too. And we had to employ a little bit of that in Arizona,
Mm.
where, for example, right, like it makes sense. Our houses happen to be very far apart. Like you had to drive to each cluster, like 2 to 3 houses, get back in the car, drive again, or driving to each house. Same thing happened in Montana. Something that like we are implementing now is that like 2 cars to a turf, no matter how big,
I love
so
it.
that like you
That's
you are
great.
working together, because like what happens here is that like, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more in terms of like morale. This
Yeah.
really is about morale, right? Like the conversations are hard, the doors are hard, but the people that we have on these trips, they know it's going to be hard, they signed up for this, but it doesn't stop the feeling of like, oh man, I don't know if I'm making any headway, I don't know if it's worth it to be out here, all I've gotten were stares or no responses, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And for
I don't know if
every,
they I don't know if they knew it was going to be hard. Some
well,
people didn't
that's
know it'd be
true.
this
That's
hard.
true. That's true. Yes, it didn't know it was going to be this hard.
Yeah.
But they are also passionate and invested in this too.
Yeah.
That like as soon as we kind of like processed why it was so different, right? With these teams, people were like, that makes so much sense.
Mhm.
I find purpose again in like what I'm doing here. I just thought I was going to be doing something else, but now that you framed it this way, I can totally do this, right?
You're talking
So,
about a specific instance where Lucha, a Latinx organization in
mm,
Arizona, whose volunteers are predominantly Latino, um, and they organize their own community to vote. When they hear Common Powers coming in, they know that we have majority white volunteers, and so they intentionally send us out to the white suburbs that A, their volunteers can't get to as easily, and B, that their community is not as comfortable knocking on doors in. And so
right.
we're doing this huge service for them by
Yeah.
having our folks talk to people who look more like
Yeah.
us.
But we're also rambling a little bit. Back to my point, which is that
Yeah.
like when you feel like you're accomplishing something with another person or with another car, you want to do it more, right? So like having 2 cars to a turf, coming together, finishing with each other, that sense of accomplishment makes the next few turfs easier. Because I think
Mhm.
part of the reality right now is that like for every 50 um not homes or no conversations, you're getting like 3 to 4 that really make a difference. And for some of these races, it does come down to just 3 to 4 conversations, a handful per precinct, right? um so like all the community tactics, all of the canvassing tactics that we currently have are things to just get people going to the next door, because you have to go to the next door to make a difference here. You can't just be like at a door, right? So, I mean, I kind of want to end with that because we're going to have more observations and insights in like the next couple of weeks too. So we'll keep doing more of
You
this, I
want to? I
suppose.
got more stuff. What do you mean?
What do you mean you got more stuff?
I got more stuff.
Okay, fine. Okay, then I'll ask a question and then you can go on more to your stuff. Um, so question to because we got really tactical about this, which is that if we're persuading people, how long do we persuade them for?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
or how can you tell? How can you tell
And how
if
can you
this,
tell?
if I should stay
Yes.
at a door?
Yeah.
Um,
Because you're
s-
like, after a hard day of getting no answers, I finally got a person. I'm going to talk to them for 30 minutes and try to really
so,
change their mind.
okay. So I mentioned community is a thing that exists that we haven't had to adjust. So where have we adjusted the most? It's been how we behave on doors. And having a bunch of conversations with people who you personally fundamentally have disagreements with is really taxing. Going up to somebody, I bet in Montana, and saying, okay, you're going to vote for Donald Trump, fine, here's Tester, like that, over and over again, takes something out of us libs. um Having conversations with people who are repeating Fox News talking points, who are repeating Trump's lies and stuff, and being patient with them and then trying to reason with them, that takes something from us. And so one of the things, the biggest thing that we need to change on these doors is that we need to not spend so much of our precious energy processing nonsense and 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 spending it on a voter who is less likely to turn our way, and instead going to find those who are more likely to vote for our people. So the the conversation we had tonight was trying to draw like a hard line in the sand when it comes to that kind of stuff. So the people who, when you knock on a door and you say, I'm a I'm here for with the Democrats, right? I'm here with, progressive values, or I'm here for this Democratic candidate, whatever. Like you're very clear about who you are. The reaction to that, if the reaction to that is severely negative, or outright refusal, it's time to go. It's time to quit the door and walk away. Can you convince that person? Maybe. We have a lot of good volunteers, and maybe that's a vote that you could get. The better door, where you could spend more time, or, excuse me, where you could spend more time at less doors, or more time at more doors. Wait, less time at more doors.
Less time at more doors. Same
The same
vote.
amount of time
Same
at
same.
more doors.
No, it's like how much time are you investing into a single vote that will
Yes.
matter the same? Yes.
Yes, yes.
There you
So
go.
what we're finding is that people who decide to take people who interact with us, who respond to Democrat candidate or us identifying as Democrat negatively, those conversations take like 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Conversation with somebody who's either like all the way like, yes, I'm going to vote for your person. And we've had a lot of Republicans saying that they're going to vote for Kamala Harris. Let me just say that. A lot of Republicans, a lot. And independents as well. Or those people who you say you're a Democrat and they're like, okay, tell me more. Like those people, those conversations are a lot. Those take less
Yeah.
time. And you're more
So,
likely to get a vote for ourselves.
right. I feel like a rule of thumb that I use, because like I'm pretty good at engaging people and I'm also pretty good at disengaging myself. Like a good rule of thumb for me is a really simple three strikes you're out kind of thing. I would try to make a connection three times. And if I'm just going back and forth after despite all those tries, I'm getting out of there. You know what I mean? So for example, if like I come up and I'm like the first try is like hey, I'm a volunteer with X. And then they're like, I'm totally good, you know? And then like, but that doesn't stop me because like we're still in persuasion. I still want to make a connection with someone. I would just say, well, tell me more about that. Or like, well, is there an issue that you're particularly concerned about? And if the wall comes back up again, then I can just be like, well, are you planning to vote? Right. So that's the third try. And then if people are just like, you know what, I'm good. You don't really gotta, whatever, then we're done. We're done. Thank you for your time. But if at any of those tries, someone is more receptive and they're like willing to dialogue with you in a constructive way and not just simply waiting for you to finish speaking so they can speak, right? And then go on about whatever, and they're just kind of like holding you there. Um, then that's how you know a conversation is moving towards something, right? But if it's not moving towards like securing a support, planting a seed of doubt, or even simply like wrapping up a conversation of like, do you plan on voting? Like finishing your goals, right? Then you just disengage.
How
Yeah.
long do you think? So I think I'd agree for two strikes.
Oh, okay. I
Okay.
feel like people have different patience levels, and you don't have to, yeah, I feel like I'm more patient and I'm definitely more of a listener than I am a
Sure.
talker outdoors. So,
Yes.
so
Then
it's
you're
for
very
me, it's
good.
three strikes. But
Okay.
for most people, it could be two. It could be two. Sometimes it's even one, actually, if they don't
I
feel
mean,
confident
for me, I feel like strike one is
confronting.
for me, I'm like strike one is I'm a black man. So that's strike one.
That's already
That's
strike one, unless you're in specific neighborhoods. Yes.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, in these
Yeah.
neighborhoods, for me, I'm always like, am I really gonna ask this white guy who's a Trumper where his wife is? Me? Am I going?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
identity matters in some of these things. I'm like, I'm gonna pass on that.
I'm gonna pass on that. I'm just gonna
It's one
say,
strike for this door.
yeah.
How long do you think that our volunteers should stay at doors? Amount of time.
if you're not getting past your first strike within 30 seconds and like within 1 minute you're not getting anywhere, go.
What about any conversation though?
What do you mean any conversation?
Well, I mean, like some people are like, yeah, I was there for 20 minutes and it was a great conversation.
I was like, good for you. What about everybody else? Oh, that's
Yeah.
so harsh. but
No, but
but it's
I mean,
true.
that's the reality is that
Yeah.
th
Yeah.
there like how long does a conversation need to be in order for you to no, it's not even that. It's
No,
really
it's not
just
that.
at a
It's
certain point,
right.
you're, there's a finite amount of time that you can be out knocking
Right.
doors.
And there's also a finite amount of energy that you have, right?
Yeah.
So I think the thing about this is kind of goes back to how we do a lot of complex things in field work. You're an adult and you need to know what your actions cost you, right? In this work. So it's okay if you want to have 30 minutes at a door having a lovely conversation, maybe changing the entire household voting directory, right? Or whatever, you know? At the same time, your car is finishing up the rest of the turf. They're wondering where you are, and you're having this beautiful conversation, but maybe you didn't get to pick up that next turf where there may be like five other people looking for voting information, right? And it
Yeah.
just takes 30 seconds.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And that's the difference. You know, you people we finish the turf and then there's everyone in the car looks at each other and they go, are we doing the next turf? And, if you're the one who's having 20-minute conversations at single doors and the other two, three people in your car are finishing the turf and they're doing that a couple times, when you're like, let's do another turf, they're going to be like, I don't
I don't
think I
know. I don't
want to
think
do that.
so. Yeah. And here's the only caveat
And
I will
now,
say to
to
that.
your point,
Yeah.
there's this turf that didn't, there's a whole neighborhood that didn't get touched
Yes.
because you had a super awesome singular
Right.
experience.
And but like the only caveat I would say to that is that like if you need it for your mental health and like for your like your I need a pick me up. I've had a really stressful day.
Okay.
Nothing's been going well, right?
Okay.
I finally chanced upon this conversation. I'm going to take my time a little bit. And I
Yeah.
think there's
Yeah.
some grace to that
Yeah. I
because
agree.
like there's a sense of sustainability in this work, right? If you there's been conversations I've had where it's just been like a gift for me to be a
Yeah.
part of and it's allowed me to keep going the next day or two. And so,
Well, I would say
yeah,
I would add random people on the street too to that. Like give yourself
right.
the random people sometimes are like those are the best conversations sometimes when you're
100%.
having
100%.
a run of bad doors. But I don't know. I think counter to that, I would say for me sometimes if I'm in a bad string of doors, it actually makes me want to get faster to the good ones. Like I know it's like Easter
Mm,
egg hunting. I'm like, it's here somewhere. There's a
yeah,
good door
yeah,
here somewhere. So let me get past
yeah.
these
But that's the
these
thing for you, right?
apathetic doors
Yeah,
or these people who don't want to talk to me or look at me weird through the window and stuff.
right,
And let me
right.
just really get to the one that I did that it was a registered Republican and it's a long driveway and I'm by myself. I mean, long driveway, like down
Mm,
around over a
a little
bridge
bridge.
and
Yeah.
I'm fully on their property, like full, like out of sight from the main street. I'm by myself. I pull up and around and this 30, 40-year-old woman approaches the truck pretty quickly and I hop out and show her the Kamala thing and she's like, "Oh yeah, of course. I'm a teacher. I'm fully
Mm-hmm.
voting for
Mm-hmm.
Kamala."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." And so I'm like hunting that
Yes.
one. That's the
Yeah.
one I'm looking for.
Yeah. So it really depends on people's speeds, right? And then you just gotta like feel it for your group, you know? If
Yeah.
you're gonna be having 30-minute conversations in a rural neighborhood, we're not finding you. We don't fucking know where you are, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're stuck there, you're stuck there. You gotta be like calling people. There might not be signal, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but I truly do think that like sometimes you just gotta take your time in certain neighborhoods to really reinvigorate yourself. But don't take too much time because
Yeah.
your time is shared. I think that's the main point, right? Like you're not there for yourself. You're with a team. You have a
Yeah.
car. Other people are there too with their own like whatever they need in that moment. So being conscious, right, with what you're doing when you're out there.
So okay, so that reminded me of two more tactics. One of them is you're going to spend more time with partners. on these doors than we're used to. So I think people are used to like starting a day with partners, or if you're new, starting going to doors together with partners. But if you are encountering a lot of highly charged conversations, if you're worried about all of
Mm-hmm.
the future ones to be had, you got to just go with a partner. And that's been
Yeah.
really helpful. If people have had hard days the next day, that they stick closer to a partner, and it ends up working out really well for them. There are some one or two pretty hard conversations that people had on doors today, and they had partners with them, and it was really good. It was really good for both of them to have that shared experience and be able to support each other afterwards. So I'd say that persuasion conversations at doors are going to take longer, and also it will take more people at a door. It just will. Um, the other tactical adjustment is debriefs are more important.
Mm-hmm.
They're more
Yep.
important. We can't speed through debriefs. And that's breaking down interactions in cars, at lunch, encouraging people to talk about their doors, uh, and ask people for tips on how they did things. And then a debrief, really taking the time to not just tell stories one after the other, but to analyze as a group what worked for people when they had good interactions. Like, what did you say to somebody in that story? Um, and for the more experienced volunteers and team leads to call out things they hear in the story, things that were great that people did that other people should replicate, and things that were like not so great that people should not do. Spent too
Yeah.
long at a door, or you argued with a Trump voter, or those kinds of things. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, Another thing to that too, would be that like we've gotten more new volunteers on these trips. So like there's a good chunk of volunteers who actually don't know what normally canvassing is like with Common Power.
yeah,
And so I think another tactic is to reset this framework of like, well, what are we doing here, right? Like what kind of voters are we targeting? What kind of conversations can we expect to have? It's not just like the easy shallow waters like entryway
mhm,
into the work that we've kind of like had in the past. um so just kind of like level setting with people in the beginning has helped, or like right after the shock of the last 2-3 days of like what we were doing, that has helped a lot. And this video is a part of that process.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
part of the reframing here.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So people should expect, well, team leads have already gotten a Slack message with a bunch of this written out by you.
Hmm.
So they are going to be thinking of a lot of this differently.
Volunteer trainers as well.
Volunteer trainers are now
Mm-hmm.
implementing. We had training today, and we freshly recorded 102, which is talking to people when you talking to volunteers, and that's going to be up on YouTube soon, if not already. But I gave a little bit of this in the beginning, kind of level setting expectations around what kind of places we're
Mm-hmm.
going to be sent to, what kind of voters we're talking to. Um, and at some point, a message is going to get sent to volunteers on Slack also.
Yeah, probably with this recording attached. Um, but anything else you want to end here? I feel like I actually don't really want to end it on anything definitive, because this is like a very much like a okay, we need to synthesize this in real time, right? Like what's happening.
Hmm.
And we're getting it out to you all so you're prepared for the trips that are coming up this weekend and the weekend afterwards. And we're gonna learn more. We're gonna learn more as we go on here. And so we're gonna be feeding that knowledge back to you all as we go.
Yep.
Okay.
Uh, Lean on each other. The principles, the CP principles and community get us through. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, this is the work that the country needs. This is it. This is what is going to help us win.
Yeah.
And um, there's really no one else is going to do it. It's going to be common power that's going to do it. So let's get out there and do the work. It's fight or flight, really. You run into something like this and you can say like, nah, I'm out. You can also double down. And we need to
Yeah.
double down. What's going to help us get through this are more people, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had a rough time out there indoors, or you're thinking about traveling soon, or you're planning on traveling soon, and you're not sure, then maybe you should bring somebody with you. Actually, you should bring a friend or a spouse, a family member, and have them be a part of your support because we got to do this work. We've got to do the work.
Yeah. Okay. And that's why even though we're tired, we're right back out there again. As soon as Friday. So
Yeah. Oh,
here
after
we
the
are.
trip. Yeah, that's right. We
Yeah.
we go home on Wednesday,
Mm-hmm. And then we're back on Friday.
back out on Friday. That's right.
That's right.
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right, get some rest.
You too. Bye bye.